Good morning to you, my friends, wherever you may be in the world today. Getting myself situated here. Welcome to this ongoing series of sharings based upon my newly published book. It's me on the back cover, Extinction X-Rated, an auto-fictional dark satire about good and evil. Today is the 36th episode in this sharing. The title, based on today's emotions, vulnerability and the Dhamma. Vulnerability and the Dhamma. What I call my twin superpowers. So if I may, with your support, to the friends in our lives, to our families, to those places in our own heart that we wish to bring forth to offer hope to our fellow sisters and brothers in this journey to the unborn, may today's sharing together collectively offer light and hope and the inspiration to keep rising up in the radiance of one's integrity, one's dignity, one's ethical and spiritual and existential courage. I'm a little slow today. I don't know why. There's been a lot going on. If I may offer a little bit of an update on my own circumstances. I was at hospital again all afternoon yesterday and got back this evening, meeting with one of my cardiac surgeons, the head of UCLA Medical in Westwood, a very brilliant, empathetic, caring man, and his surgical team. Bless them with their expertise. Yet again, a deeper dive, if you will, a more pixelated understanding of my own present circumstances, and all about percentages of risk, percentages of survival, images and analogies of what this medical condition is, and a heartfelt sharing of what it means to possibly place one's life and heart, literally one's heart, into the hands of this gentleman and his team of cardiac nurses, assistants, and surgeons. I hope you're well. I hope you're aspiring to find beauty in what you do, in how you are, where you are. To take some of the speed and the unquestioned anxiety and momentum into the future out of space. Abide more instinctually with my own quest to question longevity of life over a more intimate, heightened quality of life. I feel that I am choosing the latter over and over again without negating or neglecting a dialogue inside and with others, with friends, intimates, and professionals about quality of life and also longevity of life, considering that we're all inherently born into the obvious but easily disguised. We're all mortal, all in an evanescent, incessant castle, home, cottage, earth, atmosphere of change. Very hard to get my existential heart beating in oneness rhythm with the fact of impermanence, being a nanosecond causality, every second, every minute, every hour of every day, every thought, every neuron, every breath, everything that ever was, that ever will be, is built on a castle of conditions, mental and physical, cognitive and organic. And here we sit, talking, relating in this most phantasmagorical dance of life, fraught with good and evil, right and wrong, love and hate, generosity and greed. Pause. I've been thinking a lot about my brothers and sisters in Burma, the struggles that they encounter, the incredible challenge, the epic challenges to wake up and to face another day of what would be so easy to anoint as utter bleakness. The persecution of a country, of an ideology, something so beautiful as democracy, and something so elegant as the universality of human rights, the capacity for you and me and our sisters and brothers and friends to wake up in the safety and the sanctity of being protected by rule of law, to use our thought, to use our hands, to use our mind, to use our capacity to dream creative expressions of song and music and religion and philosophy and art and science, to overcome the deepest tendrils of dictatorship and totalitarianism and injustice rooted in these primordial forces of greed, anger, and delusion. And in Burma today, we see through digital media, in those blessed people on the ground in Myanmar, in all the ethnic minorities around the country, in the country, fighting for survival, fighting for their ideology, fighting for the dream of a better tomorrow. Brilliant. I stand and sit and speak in solidarity with you, brothers and sisters. Today, vulnerability and Dhamma, my two twin superpowers, stand in fidelity with yours, rising up in seeing the courage that you bring to the forefront of your lives. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I think of the people in Palestine, in Gaza, in Jerusalem, in Tel Aviv, in Israel, all throughout the Middle East, people around the country dealing with rockets and bombs, interceptors of rockets, tanks and aircraft and military, terrorists and freedom fighters, civilians and children, frontiers on the front side and in the inside, people at the front lines of this great adventure, this great horror, living in the Gaza, living in Jerusalem, living in Tel Aviv, living in terror in Burma, in Jerusalem, in Gaza, in the West Bank, everywhere in the world today where there's terror. My Lord, I feel blessed with my condition to have a choice, but so few people have that capacity to make a choice on their own behalf. They are stuck, they are mired in contexts that are so unthinkably horrific. Vulnerability as a virtue, as a superpower. Who has the stealth to think that courage doesn't weep, to think that power doesn't crumble, to think that hope doesn't fear, to think that greed isn't tarnished so often with delusion and self-centered striving. These great dualities are not black and white. We must merge for myself right now. This deep superpower of vulnerability. I do not know ultimately what to do, when to do it, with whom to do it, where to do it, how to finance doing it. Sometimes the utter exhaustion of the cultural, the political, the financial, the existential, the psychological, the Dhammic, all these different convulsing, intersecting intelligences and ignorances vying for center stage, in-breath, out-breath. Sometimes don't you just feel that you're just overwhelmed with vulnerability and all you want to do is pull the plug on mortality and go, listen, I want to mindfully euthanize. I want to numb and I don't see it as wrong. The superpower of vulnerability on the terms of one's own dignity. I am learning ever more intimately the fine, tragic, beautiful art of crying. I just don't know sometimes. And coming back from hospital yesterday, the long, slow drive down Wilshire, pretty much bumper to bumper in this great metropolis, this urban environment that seems so foreign, and I look out the window and I see people walking with their carts, walking with their heads down, looking as if they're coming through a daze of fentanyl and barbiturate and morphine and lack of empathy. And there they stand, they're brothers and sisters. How come them? How come not me? All over the world, 8 billion human beings driven 24/7 by an out-of-control economy, driven by electrification and fossil fuels, coal and nuclear power, 440 plants, all programmed on vulnerability, electricity, coal, human minds, frailty, nuclear weapons, pollution, satellites, NASA, SpaceX, rape, genocide, starvation, tourism, fights breaking out in villages and scenes around the world, guns and rockets, privilege and profit, all the ways in which the machination of this world is so deafening. All I want to do is cry sometimes. I just don't know why longevity is preferred over the quality of your own vulnerability, collapsing into this great morass called existence. Sometimes you just don't have what it takes to continue to hold up the front. It's not one of those days, it's one of those months, it's one of those years, it's one of those lifetimes. The lungs feel like they're filling up with apathy. The oxygen is no longer the purity of this desire to keep living and breathing and feeling for what? I cry right now when I think about, oh my God, perception trained over all these decades, not just to be mindful, but to look for the truth, to feel the truth, and to understand the truth requires an action of caring for self and other. If anything I have learned in this humble 70 years is that life has been brought forth by the epic, primordial, feminine womb, all born from the primordial woman, cared for by breasts, cared for by nutrient, cared for by hands, by family, by the goddess and by God, by vulnerability. Just think of your life, Alan, for the first 2 years, for the first 3 years, being in hospital now at this stage of life, being under the operating gun, under the operating scalpel, under the operating lens, with instrumentation. You are utterly vulnerable. You will not be able to walk easily for a couple of weeks. You will need full-time care. You'll have a long incision in your chest. You'll have a hard time feeling that you've got strength 6 weeks after operating. You'll have difficulty even washing your body. In-breath, out-breath. The mere thought of that is somewhat staggering today. To think that that is what I need to undergo in order to create the safety of more time to feel, the more time to cry, more time to engage the Dhamma at the edge of who we are with who we're meeting. What does it mean to live and endure? What does it mean to live and to create? The question keeps coming up for me, why am I alive today? And what will I do with that determination, that choice? I'm not a victim of God's circumstances. But there's so much cultural taboo about mindful euthanasia, as if there's some great depression that the individual, you or me or collectively, we're not aware of. The predominance of this need, this neurotic momentum into the next, into the next. And even though if you cut it right back to here and now, okay, here I am, and there you are. And now what? Feel, love, give back, cry. I think right now, in the hands and the minds of other people, embodying empathy. I was looking at the surgeon yesterday, he and I, with the team of people in there talking. I treat each of my operations, and I've done thousands in my lifetime, Alan. Each one of them are a sacred event, he said. They're divine. I don't consider myself to be that religious, but I do feel I'm gifted, and I treat each individual in that theater for those 6 to 8 hours with the team of people as if it's a divine event, because it is divine. I have your heart in my hands. I'm not trying to be melodramatic. You must, Mr. Clements, understand your condition as a ticking bomb, he said. And I went, oh my God, let's be in silence here together and weep. Ticking bomb? I want to be honest with you. How many people live with this condition that do not choose surgery? I don't know any. Once known, they all choose surgery. And I can feel the kind of psychic existential full Nelson creeping in, that the only real sane response to this circumstance is surgery. Sir, you've never heard, never understood, never explored any possibility of the Dhamma, the miracle, the biblical, the mindful. I lived as a former Buddhist monk in Burma where we empowered consciousness. I'm telling him and the team at UCLA Medical, we've empowered consciousness as vehicle for transformation. I'm not a magical thinker, but I do believe in the nuministic, the existential, the magical, the mystical, the wonderment, the psychedelic, the psilocybin. Hear me, bro. I do believe. I'm not of that generation. I have explored consciousness. I have explored psilocybin. I have explored mushrooms. I've explored DMT and 5-MeO. I've explored psychedelics. I've explored consciousness through meditative filters. I've traveled. I've been in relative complex places, refugee camps, areas of extreme distress and conflict, sometimes war. I do believe in consciousness as a transformational vehicle to the body and to the mind, sir. You've never seen anyone influence their ascending aorta aneurysm through consciousness? Alan, if I did, I would say yes, but no. No. It will not reduce in size. Am I thinking to myself, conflict of interest, different worldviews? I like the fact that he does what he does. He's a surgeon, he's physical, he's got a nuministic, existential, spiritual, biblical, religious, divine motivation. He's an elegant human being. All these men and women in the room there, the team, are all looking at you. You've discovered an ailment that most die from. It's called the silent killer for a reason. Do you not want longevity, safety? And it's so compelling right there. What are the dates that you have upcoming for surgery? And how will I make this decision? You will need several people with you for several weeks. You can't drive for 2 months. You'll have a very large incision right down your sternum and your chest. It's an intense operation, but you will be among the living at the end. I do pray and I do have confidence, sir, that that is what will be true. And if you wait, if the 1,000 people, he said, this year where a condition like yours dissects or ruptures, the average size of that aorta is smaller than yours. So you must assess risk, quality of life, and what you consider to be an important decision, the most important decision probably of your entire life. In breath, out breath. I didn't sleep last night. I couldn't get out of my head, no matter how mindful, this ticking bomb, this potential of rupture of the largest artery in the body from the heart. And with this idea that it could happen any minute. And I'm thinking, what would I do differently? And don't overanalyze this, but feel. But then what? With whom? Where? Why not build and create a temporary sacred oasis? I'm thinking I'm coming to the end here with vulnerability and Dhamma. I'm thinking, if I had my dream, what would it be? Okay, and I'm going like, just notice what you're thinking and saying right now. You're saying, if you had your dream, reverse that and embody, you have your dream. You are alive in the dreamscape of making real, Alan, on the promise of your most intimate superpowers. Don't postpone your Dhamma. How often I would see in the monastery with meditators and yogis and teachers and Kalyanamitas, the highest, I know you're there with me, the most intimate regard for a balanced ease, a spacious, urgent, present time presence. The mantra that was just infiltrating almost every yogi there, neither wish to live nor fear dying. Imagine neither wish to live or fear dying enough to get surgery so that you can prolong this process to do it again. The quality of human life as you know it is more important than the next life. And I'm getting my head around this. I'm going, okay, the gift here. What do you really want to do? And this is really, I want to end here, is so many people around the world just don't have choice, or their choice is cut back so to the nanosecond. I can't even imagine how the boys and girls, nearly 4,000 political prisoners in the last 3 months in Burma alone, doctors, nurses, all humans are humans, doctors and nurses, professors and teachers, of your own children to military personnel, doctors and nurses, teachers and artists, journalists and filmmakers, poets and comedians and satirists and writers, intellectuals, taxi drivers, mothers, pregnant women, influencers on Instagram, Facebook, even people who put up 3 fingers to show solidarity with the Spring Revolution, their mom and dad, their cousin, their uncle, all because they believe in the dream to be the most remarkable expression of yourself humanly possible, and their choice making is right there. I would prefer to die than to cower to the totalitarian propaganda lie of incarceration or a bullet right in my head or whatever you wish to do with my body. I would prefer to die than to compromise my integrity to myself and to my fellow brothers and sisters and the future of the democracy movement in this country and around the world. And I'm going like, wow, 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 wow. That's where I want to live more and more and more. And I want to take fear dressing, deprivation propaganda, unrecognized comfort cloaking, privilege engagement, all the ways in which I am unrecognizably interwoven with the misinformation, the propaganda, the distortions, the incessant idea and information launderers in the corporate media, in the spiritual, psychological fields, all of that noise, a shield from it, a decoding of it, and what remains? What remains today? What will you do? And that's what I'm thinking. I am going to create, God willing, Dhamma willing, brothers and sisters willing to co-create with me. I don't know how I can do it, emotionally and financially, or whatever's required, but come play in that field of a co-creative expression. 3 months. My own sacred Burning Man, my own existential, Rumi-esque Rodin, the lover, made real in the field of the sacred. I want to meditate not as if I've meditated before, but as if I've never meditated before, and bring everything I've ever done meditatively before into that virginal superpower called vulnerability. I want to experiment with states of consciousness. I'm going to give a couple of talks coming up very soon on a topic that I rarely ever address and talk about in detail, is what I would call the psychology of the psychedelic, the existentialism of the psychedelic, the meditation within the metaphor and the compound of the psychedelic. I want to provide some of my own personal insight into that, because not only am I experimenting the last couple of years with the psychedelic, but it feels more and more that I'm playing within the metaphorical, psychological dimension of the organic psychedelic, meditative, mindfully intelligent trans lens in shared space right now, because it is so mind illuminating over the idea of compromise and propaganda, longevity. It may sound deranged, but life is risk, right? I think of my ally in the Buddhist texts, teachings attributed to this young man, Gautama. And there he is, living in his Ocean Avenue in northern India. He's living in his Santa Monica. He's living in his Bel Air or the Palisades. He has pretty much everything he wants. He hasn't seen revolution. He hasn't seen a civil disobedience movement in Burma. He hasn't seen the tyranny of what it means to be in Israel or in Gaza. He doesn't understand war in Somalia. He has never seen Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge. He has never witnessed old age and disease and death. He has never seen homelessness. He is a naked, virginal, protected human entity who is shrouded in wealth, majesty, and in emotional and intellectual support to be the highest, most intelligent expression of royalty in India at the time. In other words, he is living a privileged life. And suddenly there is the awakening, the catalyst. Right now, my superpowers are the Dhamma. And part of the Dhamma for me as a superpower is its catalytic energy, which is conscience and dignity and mindful intelligence and ethical courage and determination, patience and effort, and compassion and empathy, and self-respect and self-love, all integral to the moment. And there's the provocation of interruption, of comfort, of pretense, of privilege, and you feel beyond the veneer, the propaganda. And all of a sudden you go, oh my God, my life is not in any way connected to the reality of life. It is a privileged ivory tower life, and I need to come into reality. And so the Buddha was said to have encountered these heavenly messengers, things that interrupted, catalyzed, broke the conformity to the propaganda of white or an Indian privilege. And so right now for me, there's been this, okay, you've been diagnosed with a fatal illness unless you take a radical, complex surgery immediately. And even then, there's difficulties, there's problems. What's new? It's been an interruption as a superpower. And do I want to do anything other than to go as high as possible right now with these heavenly messengers? And that is what I'm inviting you and me and those few of us that want to commune and to convene together to undress the conventions and extraordinarily co-create a higher expression of love, of compassion, of feeling, of the exploration of consciousness is what I'm trying to get at. I don't have the answers, but we want to do something that's never been done before to discover the wisdom, freedom, nibbana, heightened parami filters, mindfulness, samvega, mindful intelligence, compassion, empathy, Dhamma, freedom, nibbana, parami. How can we explore these conscious concepts as living organic realities? 2, possibly overcome the intrinsic Truman Show that we're embedded. It's so false, so unreal. I don't know about you, but the psychedelic and the meditative lens, and here with this diagnosis of a fatal illness and that there's a heavenly messenger, I'm going like, oh my God, okay. The window pane of continuity and propaganda, of comfort, of privilege, of security, of health is cracked in the best, most elegant way. And there is the luminosity of a deeper truth, an urgency, a vulnerability. Let me close here. Yesterday I spoke about the Dalai Lama, and when he was asked back in 1989 here in Newport Beach at a conference where he was leading Buddhism and psychotherapy, and there were many hundreds of psychotherapists from around the world there. And he was asked, in my paraphrasing of the question and his answer, who in your country, who in the world are you inspired by? You're a mentor to millions Who is one of your mentors? Where do you draw inspiration? Where are your superpower experiences? And he said, there's a man in my country known in English as the weeper. Someone who cries. Someone who cries. Yesterday and last night, I don't even know why, but crying. The window pane of familiarity, if you're there with me, the facade, the attire of Mara, that which glistened at one point in our life with the luminosity of a gem or that of gold, is fading, and there's a higher luminosity that isn't afraid of what we see in the mirror of reality with our skin, our bodies, what we know of beneath the skin, with the changes in our organs and our blood. We are now in a different phase of life. I am no longer in my 20s. You're no longer in your 40s. You're no longer in your 50s. You're no longer in your 60s. All of us, as human encased, organic spiritual events, exploding in our own mediocrity, in our existential radiance, on the canvas of shared time called samsara, we sit. What will we do with the preciousness of the next 100 years on planet Earth? What will we do with the preciousness of the next year in our homes, in our towns, in our communities? What will we do with the next 3 months? That's my question. In breath, out breath. Neither wish to live nor fear dying, but equally the courage right now to rise up. Reclaim your voice. Reclaim your passion in a setting. Go Rembrandt, go Rodin, go Rilke, go Rumi, go Yasodhara, go Vimala, go Sariputta, go Gautama, go Avalokiteshvara. Go, 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 metaphor girl. Go, 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 metaphor boy. Go, go, go to your majestic, your Magellan, your adventurer. Go, 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 naked dancer. Go, 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 goddess god. Go, 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 DJ on the absolute keyboard of infinity. Play a music that undresses pretense. Get so naked and real. What will you create with your own spoken word? Trans-ideological, deep, 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 pre-existential. Where is your orgasm that never dies? Where is your nibbana? Where's your unconditional freedom right now? So unpostponed that you no longer meditate for a goal. Who will you kiss? Who will you touch? What will you watch? Where will you feel? Who will you be close to? In breath and out breath. Are you willing to die? Are you willing to live? Are you willing to feel right there? Don't you want more of this time? Don't you want months of it? Don't you want a few more years of it? Don't you want to fall in love again? Don't you want to have a child? Don't you want to be near your daughter? Don't you want to make love with the goddess of your dreams? Don't you bait to repeat desires yet met? Isn't there something on the palette of your colors that you want? Where's your hope, Mr. Clements? Because if you don't undergo surgery, you will die. You will die. You will die. You will die. I keep hearing that last night with this ticking bomb. You will die. You will die. You will die. Heavenly messenger, the angel of death. Decode death, decode suffering, right here. As I feel the Dalai Lama talking about his weeper friend and the vulnerability of this man going to people in his ancient Tibet, which could be you and could be me, and he kneels down to position himself in the heart-mind sphere of exchanging oneself, the psychological existential skill of taking one's feeling identity and placing it literally in the mind, in the body of another, empathy. Not thinking about being empathetic or compassionate, actually transferring our nervous, etymological, organ-based, heartbeat relationship to other in their mind and body. And what do you feel? This is empathy in action, right? And it's so easy as you walk down the streets of Makawao and Paia and Wailuku in Paris and Berlin and Vancouver and New York and the Bronx and Venice and Venezuela to just ricochet with little moments and glimmers of empathy and vulnerability and Dhamma power. But if you really were to pause, as the Dalai Lama was telling all these particular psychotherapists, my mentor is the weeper. The man situates himself into the face and the heart of another. The doctor yesterday and the team of surgeons and nurses, they did what they could to enter my body and mind with empathy. I could feel it. It was very beautiful. They shared with me the miracle of their training, their gift. And that is the Dhamma exchange. That is the gift of the encounter. That's the heavenly messenger. It's the emotionality of the Ubuntu process of real-time human engagement, not the shared concepts of I am going to be your surgeon and save your life. That is one dimension, but my mind is so connected to the Dhamma event. Are you with me? The Dhamma event of shared space. And I'm thinking of the Dalai Lama. You know, crying all the time isn't your normal, well-adjusted, well-trained, Western mindful Buddhist practitioner. It's often seen as a weakness. Yeah, you can get by with crying a couple of times and it's, you know, you can get into your, you know, vulnerability as power routine. Welcome aboard to today's talk, Mr. Clements. But crying all the time is not necessarily an act of Dhamma power. And I'm thinking, my God, if you were to go to your psychotherapist and say that you've been encountering a new relationship with people in Burma, in Gaza, in Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem, in Somalia, in South Africa, in Venice, in so many different areas of the world that you see suffering, and that you are inherently practicing compassion with these people. And you're crying in the face of your encounter with suffering. Your therapist is going to say you have probably some unrecognized trauma that's dictating your emotional response more so than your idea of it being an act of compassion in action. And if you continue to cry, no doubt your psychiatrist or your psychotherapist would be advocating some form of pharmaceutical intervention to help support what would be seen as chronic trauma, chronic untreated depression. and you'd be on some form of drug or antidepressant, and you're weeping and you're weeping. And here the Dalai Lama is telling 3,000 psychotherapists that his hero is a man in Tibet who cries in the face of suffering. And I'm thinking about this last night as I'm crying about my own condition, about life. And I'm thinking, at least I'm crying. And the Dalai Lama said the reason why the weeper is my mentor is that he can cry and I rarely cry. And I want to pause right there. The buried lead in this story for me is not so much mimicking the weeper as a behavior, as crying in the face of existence, although that's a pretty healthy response. But it's authenticating a real emotion at the face of our vulnerable edge. If crying is the precursor to a more evolved compassion, probably rejection or even sadness or anger precedes the vulnerability of crying. And you could see even that sadness and anger and recoiling or even judgment could be seen as in the spectrum of evolving empathy and compassion. And I'm going like humanizing my Dhamma, the superpower of vulnerability, that I don't need to have the answers, that I can be in this field right now of radical uncertainty and remove the shame of wrong from it. That's another key thing for me. Remove the shame of wrong or getting it right. There's a sense right now that if there isn't surgery immediately, you have failed the mission of true love for friends and families. Yes, there are those that stand in there and go, radical fidelity to what is true for you. But I hope it's on my terms. And right there, the Buddha is leaving his home, is encountering a heavenly messenger, and his friend is saying, Gautama, that dead man is the condition of all life. We don't know when. It will happen to you. It will happen to me. Pause. Imagine right there the shuddering of security, the shuddering, the quivering of the biological, existential, psychological field. I mean, it's as if the journey of life should be taking ourselves to the front lines of complexity. This is why it's, I just wish the United Nations Security Council could hear this section of this sharing today. The story of the weeper, the capacity of you men and women in the role of exercising compassion in action for the most respected human rights body on the planet. Where is your weeper? Where is your tears? Where are you quivering in the face of the suffering of the people in Myanmar right now? No, a turning away, a numbness. And so this gift right now, I don't know where this is going, but the gift I'm trying to get to, if there's anything in this for me, it's the sensitizing of my mindfulness to feel more realistically beyond my own predicament, the predicament of all beings, the predicament of life, the predicament of this primordial attachment to longevity over the intimacy of sacred quality. If I really truly believed myself Could there be an experience today? Could there be an experience today that is so spectacular that I would choose that experience over having 5 more years of life? I think of the weeper, me being embodied just towards myself. Where do I feel myself in the most dignified sense of unmitigated self-respect? That's all I care about living with right now. Not right or wrong, longevity or time or circumstances, is self-respect. The way in which I sit up, use my voice with you, receive what gifts you give me through your words, your emoticons, your support, your co-creative interests to commune together in using the most refined emotions between us. And that's what I hear in the Dalai Lama sharing. This man represents the fidelity and the dedication to the pursuit of greatness. This man is dedicated to the elevation of compassion. He puts himself in the present time experience of another and meditatively embodies, I want to know you on the terms of how you know you, empathy in action. There's something so cool about that. And I keep coming back to this point over and over and over again. I met this angelic nurse the other day in hospital with my angiogram. Her name was Mai. She's the central character in the last quarter of my book. It's the name of Maitreya and Avalokiteshvara, the feminine inspiration of Maitreya, calling upon the divine feminine for guidance. Yesterday with the surgeon and the team, the communion of empathy. Cliched as it is, it almost takes being diagnosed with a fatal illness to know what we're capable of in terms of intimacy and the kiss, the superpower of vulnerability. I don't need to be strong. I don't need to get it right. I'm taking myself down from the cross of mistakes right now. I cannot live for you. I can only live to understand the deepest intuitive truth this hour, this day. I can't fail myself by doing that. So I want to thank you all for being in my life, being in my dreams, being in my heart. Serendipity along these uncertain moments with these personal sharings that I want to reiterate are primarily my way of self-liberating and self-therapy. I don't know any other way than to get down with spontaneity and freelance in uncontrived naturalness to discover, okay, you're discovering what you really think and feel. I must do that. And so thank you from my heart for being there in that process. I can't be who I am, Ubuntu, without you. I would love to be in real-time communion in a retreat environment with 5, 10, 20 blessed sisters and brothers meditating, doing yoga, sitting in silence, rising up with the radiance of a sunrise and taking it higher with a sunset, to make love in the existential communion of a mystical nakedness that transcends sex but doesn't exclude it. There's something in the poetry of shared space. I want to play with you in the sacred field of the Nibbana molecule. That is a rare concept that's new for me to be using more and more in my lexicon of unconditional presence. Nibbana as a momentary phenomena of unconditional engagement with the phenomenology of consciousness with consciousness, consciousness with form, consciousness with consciousness in subconsciousnesses, and consciousness in form and in consciousness that transcends dimensions as we know it as humans. The multiplicity of intersecting context with consciousness in form. I want to play in that garden. So thank you for being in my life. Thank you for listening to today's talk. I hope you have a wonderful Saturday, and I hope to see you tomorrow here Sunday at 9:30 for a continuation of these sharings. And from my heart to yours, thank you.